What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of OverBOTCH Podcast. Yes, I did the dramatic rock sniff.
Almost sound like the gold dust.
Almost like or Goldust or the Drama King did that lovely chap. Whatever happened to him, we'll find out later.
Yeah.
But no, welcome back to another episode of the OverBOTCH Podcast. We are in that lovely, weird little doldrum in between stages. The midseason madness has passed us. If you did not watch that episode, check it out last week. Despite some logistical nightmares, it turned out to be one of the best tournaments ever in terms of actual games, some incredible pop-off performances, and some shakeups in I think teams kind of power rankings and where people are going to be heading into the next stage. So
and one of the most impactful C9s of the week.
Oh my goodness gracious, yes.
Look at you, San Francisco Shock.
But the funny thing is, despite that, hell of a game though. That was just the unfortunate thing. It was just like hell of a game up to that point, and then it's just like, oh, of course that's how it ends. Of course that's how it ends. But regardless. So check that one out. I'll put hopefully a little card or something up in this if you're watching this on YouTube, so you can link back to that playlist and check that out. But today, so we have no games coming up this week. So we're going to take care of some more just kind of Overwatch business, OverWatch 2, and a little bit of drama in the Contender scene, which we'll get to in a little bit. And when Richard joins us, because he has a little bit more experience in that department.
Yeah.
So, but first, the first major topic of the day, inflation apparently hits OverWatch 2. We had talked about this in our Discord a little bit, and I actually did not get this survey. I did not get this.
Nor did I know.
But what I did get is I got an angry Contenders bear. Richard has
Hello.
joined us. Hello.
The timing.
Yes, excellent timing.
How
How are you, sir?
Good. You know, I was just going back over the all that stuff that happened like in the last week with Contenders, and I'm like,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
well,
look,
here, save it.
All right.
That'll be our second. We're gonna knock a little.
Oh, inflation hits. Oh, I see the
Yep.
Chiron right now.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't want to pay $45 for a skin? That seems to make sense to me. You know, but the game is free to play, but it is extremely costly to customize and express yourself. Which,
yes,
call me nuts, but I'm just like, hear me out. But I feel like it might be a bad idea for a game where it is so deeply entrenched and so heavily invested in creating means for people to express themselves in all sorts of ways in game and in real life, to now say, oh, by the way, if you really want to tap into this in the game, it'll cost you anywhere between $20 to $50 or more,
allegedly.
So
I mean,
let's
survey design was awful.
And let's get into that. That's a great segue. So let's set this up for everybody. So a little while ago, a survey was sent out to certain players from the beta, or whether you might have even just been on Blizzard's list from Overwatch. I didn't get a survey either. This was shared.
None of us did.
Oh, I thought this was
in our Discord, not to me personally. There's a member of our Discord, Jay, who's in the chat right now, sent this, and then this has been tweeted about by a couple other people who got it as well. And it was about cosmetic prices in Overwatch 2. So if you're listening to this on audio, I will explain what this says. There were 4 major questions, and they all revolved around the idea of how likely would you be to purchase X at what X price? And it went from very likely, somewhat likely. You've seen stuff like this before. So the first one, and I'll read through these all, and then we'll scream and shout. So the first one, which is probably the biggest, most egregious one to a lot of people, the exciting mythic skins that everybody, was very excited about at the reveal stream and everything like that, look extremely customizable. You buy one skin and you get like 50 because you can change the arms and the helmet and the colors and the shinies and the weapon and all this stuff. So they look very cool. So the question 1, how likely would you be to purchase a mythic skin for $44.99 US? Boy.
It doesn't actually say USD.
Well, there's a dollar sign. So I
That's
would
a little,
assume.
I mean, I feel like you're
Is that a little
generalizing.
presumptuous?
I mean, that's presumptuous. I mean, we too
We're on the
have
right start.
dollars.
Well, come up with your own damn symbol, Canada. Okay, the S is ours. The S is ours. Get a little C with a line through it. No, that would be cents. Never mind. I don't know. But
no, I'm tracking though. But yeah. So
moving on. The second one. I just want to get these
wait,
all.
why
out
is it
there.
so small?
I don't know. The pictures were different sizes.
What did you do?
I
can't even read that.
I know. I don't think I
like
can
an
even zoom
iPad.
in either. I can't even zoom in because it's a picture.
Oh yeah. But well, just read it. Read it.
How likely would you be to purchase a legendary skin? Those are like the regular like gold skins at $24.99. How likely would you be to purchase a weapon charm at $9.99? That's the other laughable one.
Are you
for a single weapon charm?
all right?
And then this one was less of a like would you rather, but
Okay, so
like
that's
option,
an attempted. So
bundle
that's
option.
a configurator that's been designed based off of what you call conjoint analysis. Fun fact: I actually worked alongside a software shop, Sawtooth Software, as one of the first folks who specialized in choice-based conjoint, which is what this is. And I was there in the early days.
That. What do you mean by
So what they do in a conjoint test, just so you can put some context here.
Yeah, please.
If they did this right. The reason it says screen 3 of 12 is that what they've done is that the system creates, it presents options where you have to, where it basically creates, it gives you optional mixes, like mixes of options. So maybe a legendary skin, maybe an emote, maybe a weapon charm. And basically, as you go through the screens, you choose the one you would be most likely to select. And then you go to the next screen, and then it gives you another mix. And what it does is it figures out the technical term is each of these like price, bundle contents. There's actually 3 levels here. That's why legendary skin. You see how the formatting shows legendary skin higher than emote.
So yeah, again, before we do, just in case you're on audio only, if you're listening to this on the podcast, what you see in front of it's a little thing. It's like it's just got option A, B, C, or none.
Yeah.
And in squares with prices below them. So option A is 3 sprays, $4.99. Option B would be like an emote, highlight intro, and a souvenir, $19.99. Option C, legendary skin, weapon charm, player icon, victory pose line, a bunch of stuff, $29.99. And then the last option is I wouldn't purchase any of these. They don't appeal.
What I find, okay, so yeah, so what happens is as you go through these screens, you can start to figure out where people had a propensity to always choose options that contain certain like you choose certain cards that had certain options. So it would find out you always chose the one with sprays, or Plex always chose the one with emotes. Now what's funny is because it's only showing screen 3 of 12, I cannot tell you if this is a standard CBC choice-based conjoint or a proper adaptive ACBC, adaptive choice-based conjoint, which actually determines when you have these pluralistic choices, you always choose one thing. It'll force hard trade-offs and then stop showing you options that you will automatically reject.
Right.
Now, why I think it's funny is that there's a few challenges I see with the nature of their design, because I see how it says 3 sprays and 1 spray, which means, so what we call those is you call those levels. Okay, so within each level, you have options and choices, and each value, each option over the course of the test gives you what you call a utility, because what you can determine is within each level, what's the most popular option. Are people always looking for 3 sprays or 2 sprays or 1 spray? Because it's not always, an even distribution. The problem with an adaptive choice-based conjoint, or the problems one can run into, is that when you design an orthogonal distribution so I'm getting a little bit technical, but when you go into an orthogonal distribution of a matrix like this, right? The problem is you have to use a Bayesian breakdown to actually figure out how the chains break out. So some folks from stats might have done like Markov chains or Bayesian analyses where you're figuring out these like plurality choices that occur when you go down option lists. But the problem is if you do a properly orthogonal design, it's multiplicative. It's based off of how many options you have within each level and then how many options you have across the card. And it gets exponentially larger and larger and larger. So based, if I saw all the questions, I could tell you whether or not
Sure.
this can work. Because if you had
Yeah.
5 options and 5 options and 5 options, like just do the math. How many configurations do you have? At minimum, it'd be 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5, whatever, right?
Mhm.
You're talking about enormous levels of magnitude just to figure out the all possible options. And then with each respondent, you need to get enough options tested to create and fulfill the orthogonal model. So if they designed this and they weren't thinking, and that's what I see, because one, you never show them like this. You're supposed to format them so they look nice. When I see this, I'm like, I don't think they did an adaptive. But if they did a
Okay.
choice-based, I'm pretty sure the answers they'll get cannot garner them any useful answers because I don't think their sample size will be large enough.
Yeah.
Because
Also, I don't know if whatever they're using to analyze it takes Microsoft Excel sheets.
well, the
Yeah.
thing is, this actually looks like a default output from Sawtooth Software's interface. Like I used to go back and forth with those guys to talk about methodologies a lot. Like I used to be a market researcher, but my background was actually specifically on choice-based analysis. So I used to specialize in this kind
This
of
is your
research.
spiel,
This is my
so to speak.
forte. Like another
Benefit of
issue-
having a marketing guy on your podcast,
right?
folks.
And one of the problems is actually for price scalers, that's a huge issue, right? Because the price scalers have really bad thing to include if it's not within a certain realm of comparability. So you see $5, $20, and $30, right? So
Mhm.
you're creating these, like you've already created pricing tiers. So you're supposed to create a more gradual curve.
Okay.
Otherwise, you can't determine sensitivity.
So
But
Richard, I was going to ask
Yeah.
you a couple of things just so I've got this clear in my head. So, first question: why are they gapped the way they are? So you got
you want to know? so the reason they're
in really
gapped.
simple terms, please.
Okay, the reason they're gapped that way is because those are actually, my hunch is the way they've done this is they have 1, 2, 3 actual levels that have been created, like options that are created. So it's like whether or not you get a legendary skin or something in that classification is like one option. That
Right.
second gap
Mm.
is their group of statements. So this is the other problem these
Oh
guys
yeah, I
did.
didn't even think about that. How like sometimes it's,
Yeah. So when you
yeah,
see 3
interesting.
sprays and versus weapon, charm, icon, pose, line, card, and spray, what that actually means is some bozo was like, hey, why don't we compare? This is our low tier, low cost of investment stuff. So we're going to group these all together. And I'm like, okay, so 3 sprays and weapon, charm, icon, pose, line, card, and spray. Those were supposed to be comparable trade-off options within that level. The gaps represent the level
Gotcha.
groups, which is
Okay.
why you're not supposed to design it like this. Because what they've done now is they are trying to equivalate the conceptual, like the cognitive value or the emotional value you have with 3 sprays and already saying that is comparable to having a massive pack of charm and icon and pose and voice line,
I'm
which
with
you
you,
can't do
No.
because that's automatically assuming a certain level of decision level
You're
balancing.
assuming the value of the content.
Oh my God. Like if I saw this, I would have been fired by my client if I submitted a research study like this. And I used to work with Nestle on this. I had to do this for ice cream packages and pricing bundles. And they used to ask me, well, how do we get to statistical reliability for the answers? And here's the friggin' problem. It's that when you do a sample size calculation and congruence, you have to break it down to, do you want to be able to choose entire options or levels or prices, which become like, remember, you're only seeing 12 cards. Given how many options they have, you can just multiply it. Let's just say there's 5 options only for 5 things, or let's say 2, like, I don't know, maybe it's, I don't know what it is, but let's just say, let's give them benefit of doubt. 3, 3, 3, right? So 3 times 3 is 9, right? Times 3 is what, 81, right? So that means there are 81 potential implications of what you could see. But the problem is they probably simplified this to like you don't see enough cards to see enough trade-offs.
Yeah.
So there's always gaps. So what happens is, and this happened when I worked with Nestle, they were like, to what extent can we use this for a price calculation? And I'm like, well, it depends how precise you want to get. The deeper you go in the options, the less detail we have because we had fewer sample cases. And I got it down to a plus minus one. I think it was like 2.7%, which might sound good. But here's the problem. Factor out plus or minus 2.7% when your annual revenue for a business line is $10 million. It's too big. So this is like somebody was like, I'm going to try to look smart and I'm going to use research, but I'm coming from a legacy of people who did like DIY Survey Monkey stuff. And I think this makes sense because all this is going to give them is some like directional information. But the big mistake they made is that they've equivocated. Those gaps you see mean that anything else, and I wish we had more than one screen.
I know.
Anything else
I'm
in
looking to
those
see if I can
gaps,
find them.
we would start to understand what it is. Now, if they did this really badly, and I hope they didn't do this, is that they only have one option.
Yeah, I was going to say. So if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, Richard, the best way I could put it sort of in my mind is one of those choose your own adventure games like Until Dawn and stuff like that.
That's exactly what it is.
It's that kind of thing where it's the butterfly effect of you do option A, and then in chapter 1, then in chapter 3, it gets influenced by that decision in chapter 1. So is that essentially what you're trying to describe here?
Exactly, because another card would have said 3 sprays for $20, and you'd be like, nope, and you'd have selected something else or said, I would not purchase any of these.
Right.
The dead giveaway, and that's always whenever you see these surveys where you have multiple screens of a matrix, and there's an exit point like I would not purchase, it's always a conjoin.
Okay.
Right.
So yeah, just
I feel bad for whoever did this because I just feel bad for whoever made this study because I'm like, you had to run into me.
Yeah.
But the prices are
that's
wild.
fascinating.
Look at the ranges.
Yes. So like in theory on all 12 of these pages, like set up would all the options always be like 5, 20, 30, or would they all be different?
Actually, that's the other thing. You could have more options than you have cards because you get to choose how many cards you have. But if you have too many options, again, each person gives you fewer answers containing each variable, which diminishes your reliability in terms of analysis. So there is a very strict rule on conjoint sample calculations. I only know this because I used to design the sampling estimates for the data teams. So, and I had to talk to the Sawtooth guys directly because there were things I was trying to do that were breaking some statistical rules. So we had to work around like some theoretical approaches to how to, reassess value. Like this is like, it's just, and it's funny because I think I was doing this in 06. So yeah, they're like doing this in a terrible way. You can do it this way, but you've got to be really smart about how you set up the options. And you almost never do massive groups. You would do scalars for spray. You would insert or like create name card as like a binary option. Yet it's there or not. But they probably did this because it's true. If you add too many options and levels, it like you end up requiring such a large sample that nothing can be analyzed. But knowing how people analyze research these days, I wouldn't be surprised if someone just made something they thought made sense because nobody actually does their research and their stats properly anymore. It's a huge issue in the industry. That's why when I saw, if you back up 2 questions, so there's already a problem with this. So like one, what the hell's a mythic skin? Like friggin' explain it. You have to show an example of what this is.
Well, they did. They did. To be fair, in the reveal event back,
I know, but you've got to do it in the survey because I don't know that you saw the thing.
Sure.
So right off the bat,
they're assuming too much.
Right off the bat, they F this up. And you know how hard it is to insert an image of. Actually, I think this is Sawtooth because Sawtooth always did blue arrows. That's their color codes. It's blue, gray, and white. So you never say how likely would you be to purchase because you're already getting people to be like, it's a likelihood question, right? So you're always supposed to say, to what extent would you consider purchasing a mythic skin at a price of $44.99? I can't tell you how likely. That's like me asking you, how much do you hate this, Matt? Plex, how much do you love this? Loaded question, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was the other night. So
terrible
like
research.
A loaded question.
This person, like this part, if this went through a traditional or a formalized research group, you'd be like, what are you doing? You don't do this when you need to actually know something. You do this when you're trying to prove a point. But the other problem then becomes they're asking how likely someone would be to purchase. So the one thing that's really funny is that if you get into purchase intent, there's a standard 5-point scale for purchase intent questions.
Okay.
Which you can modify. So already the dead giveaway here is they're asking a purchase intent question, but not using the purchase intent scale, which is definitely would buy, probably would buy, may or may not buy, definitely would not, probably would not, definitely would not, right? Because may or may not means you're unsure the extent, to what extent would you consider purchasing. You can have that. You're undecided. The reason you have that is because in market research, you have standardized discount ratios for purchase scores that are applied because you know that when someone says definitely will buy, they're not actually going to buy it. And I think like the standard discount is like you take only 35% of that top box, and I think you take like 5% or 10% of the second box. And that's how you sum it. So you can get into a normative calculation. But the way they've designed this, you can't compare this purchase to any norms database, meaning any historical results. So whoever wrote this doesn't even know the right scale for the question. But the bigger problem is you can't ask someone, how likely would you be to do something, and say neither likely or unlikely? Because if you're neither likely or unlikely, you're unlikely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
say,
this
especially
survey
that is a
response doesn't
weird
make
one.
sense.
Yeah, that's a
Because
weird
these
one.
people don't know how to write. Like these people do not know the basics of research. You're gonna get a shit ton of garbage results here. That's why I left the industry, because we were getting to a point where everyone was like, oh, I can do it myself. I'm gonna use SurveyMonkey. And then people were writing surveys that made no sense because they're like, well, how's survey and questionnaire design a skill? That's not worth it. I can type it. I'm like, no, but you're asking all the wrong questions. Ask a silly question and you'll get a silly answer.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
There's a famous documentary on this. And people like do this all the time when they're like, I would be like, I could say something like, you could go to people on the street and say like, so what do you think of, risque Overwatch analyst, Drama King Matt, and her recent and I'll say and her recent run-in with the paparazzi. And people will give you all sorts of answers because nobody ever says I don't know.
Yeah.
So basically, this whole survey is busted. Plus, if you really want to get into pricing, there are some ways you can test for price sensitivity, but you never do it typically with the scale. People used to do something where they'd run something called a Van Westendorp model for pricing sensitivity, where you try to go between it's too cheap to believe that it's of quality, it's a good deal, it's affordable, or it's too expensive. That was the general scaler, and you would create like propensity curves for it. But the problem with a Van Westendorp is that it had fixed point ends. So I actually had to modify the approach. Everyone used to use it back in the day, and I was like, I don't think this makes sense. I think it's overly fixed. I want this to be a little bit less linear. But you don't even do that anymore. What you do is you do split cells where, like Plex, I would give you an option at a price, and that's it, right? And then I would give Matt an option at a price and a good description, and that's it. And you do that across split cells that have been balanced in terms of the respondents. So that way, it's an isolated view. You only had one question. You have no context for other things because that's not how the brain works. We respond to things in front of us cognitively. So this is like this weird mishmash of somebody who went online, learned like how to ask a survey question, and got everything wrong because they do not know the subject matter, which I find hilarious because this is one of the most common exercises in marketing, and they've managed to so badly mess this up. It is no wonder everything in this game is in the state that it is. Like, these people do not know what they're doing.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't remember how long ago this was, but I saw a report on the news where they took a piece of data and they presented it to the public in two different ways.
Yes.
I can't remember exactly what they would do, but I think it was like a disease or something like that, where they went, you have a 90% chance of surviving, and then
a 10% chance of
and the responses they got were very different because of how they presented the data.
Yeah.
So looking at this, you think to yourself, what if they present the data differently?
Well, see, so this is why it's fascinating, right? So that should be part of the methodology. Often you'll do that to learn. See, these folks think I'm only going to get the answer, but part of this is meant to be that you learn how people respond to question framing, right? That's always issue framing.
Yeah.
There's a very famous case here in Ontario. So I see Warfare Matt is in here. So he's an Ontarian. He's probably too young to remember this. But once upon a time, we didn't have Sunday shopping in Canada, like in Ontario. All stores were closed on Sundays as a stat day. Now, there was a very famous, we did surveys and everything around that to figure out what the public's opinion was. And my professor happened to be the advisor who was brought in to review the research that was done by the government, right? Now, here's why it's funny. What was actually run were 2 studies. They did 2 questions on Sunday shopping. Now, the first question, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, the first question was, to what extent should businesses have the right to operate on Sundays as a 7th day of business? Something like that. And it was like 80% of people agree. So, of course, I should be able to open, if I want
If
it.
I want to, yeah.
If I want it, right? It wasn't saying you have to. It's if you
Yep.
want it. Okay. The other survey that was run, the one that wasn't used to make the case, was amazing. It said, to what extent should workers have a right to a pause day once a week from work?
Okay.
It's exactly the same outcome.
Interesting. Yeah.
And you know what? That got 80% support. But the policymakers wanted to open Sunday shopping. So they used that result.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? That is, yeah.
Here in the UK, there are certain areas that have what they call Sunday trading laws, where
Yes.
if a store is over a certain square footage, that's not just the shop floor, it's the warehouse and all the rest of it. You have to be closed within certain hours.
Yes.
And as someone who worked on a Sunday in that circumstance, let me tell you, it's not easy.
It is not easy. And this is why I find it fascinating. Because like I said, we're seeing a scale that doesn't match the question. We're seeing approaches that don't suit the question being we're looking at unideal methodologies being applied to the objective. Sure. And we're seeing a conjoint analysis. So again, my feeling is a group where they think they know research because anybody can write a question, and they've basically created, like, I can tell you objectively, if the way this is designed in my research days, if I had presented this one as an option to the research manager, they would have always been like, no, none of this works. But had I made it all the way to presentation, I would be in a lot of hot water.
Okay, so I'm going to throw this out to you, Richard. Let's say you were phrasing this question. How would you do it?
Okay, so I would have sent you and Matt in split samples, and I would have to balance out the respondent base, which they already haven't done, right? Because you have to do this based off of data that you have to make sure that those who respond to each question in isolation are balanced. But I would actually ask someone, I would show the mythic skin, explain what it is. There would be a header graphic at the top, right? Saying, actually, so, before that, I would say,
let's say it's the current Royal Knight Mercy skin. Let's use
perfect,
that as a visual example.
So this is what I would say. I would say, pre-screen to this, I would say, as you may know, Overwatch features, a number of various cosmetics that you may apply to your character in game that provide only cosmetic benefit and do not provide any performance benefit, right? Something like that. Yeah. On the following few screens, we want to ask you a few questions about your opinions about, whatever we call them, Overwatch skins. So then I'd show you the mythic skin, right? And I would ask you, to what extent would you consider or not consider purchasing a mythic skin, right, at a price of blank? And then I would do that 5-point purchase scale. I hate that purchase scale, but I would do it because that is the industry standard. And then I would only ask you those randomly, and I would ask you just the mythic skin once, and then I would ask the other skins separately on different screens, different items. When Matt got it, he would get it, but he would have a randomized set of price options for all the skins. So he might get the mythic skin for $10.99.
So I'm going to make a tiny little bit of a segue here, or at least an addendum, because it's interesting that you say that, because there might be some more information here. We do have an IGN article that got a response from Blizzard, and a spokesperson did say the survey is entirely intended to better understand player preferences for different types of Overwatch 2 cosmetics. Prices displayed in the survey were randomized per user and not indicative of final pricing, which we assume.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's kind of what you're referring to, Richard, a little bit, if that clears up a tiny bit of something.
So my hunch is that
apparently it says it's randomized.
So that you know what I bet those randomized prices are. Those randomized prices are equal to those pricing options that exist in the options in the conjoint.
Okay, yes.
What do you mean?
So like
so if you look at the conjoint question, you saw how it was like $4.99, $9.99, yes. $12.99. So I bet you those prices were different. Like with the mythic skin question, for some people showed up as $9.99. For some people showed up as $29.99.
Okay.
Right.
So like it turns up. So that 45 quid. Thinking pounds sterling here.
Yeah.
$45 price. That bit there is what changes per user. Is that right?
It could be. It could be. That based off of what they're saying, that's what I would infer. I still think though having an upper bound of that level is insane because it means they're considering it.
Right. It means they're trying to test somebody's.
It means if they could get away with it, they would, and that is what I think is hilarious. Like,
right, you did that with Valorant at one point, didn't they?
Oh my god!
Was it like $80 for a whole pack or something?
Well, I almost feel like it's like weird because it's like fair comparison, but not, because it isn't like that whole Valorant CS:GO with like the weapons skin. That's like a whole nother market, man.
Yeah,
that's like thousands of dollars. It's not the same as like Fortnite and like Apex. Even though I know there's a lot of money to be spent there. It feels like a totally like just different level of collector market within CS:GO and Valorant.
Based on what Richard's been explaining here, this is my sort of overall of this, and you can jump in if I get this wrong, Richard. So my guess is when they were setting this up, they were looking at all the other games that offer in-game purchases, because cosmetics, like your Valorants, your Smites, your CS:GOs, the rest. They took like a lower end price and highest end price, and then put in like $5 options each way, and then that became their sort of core. So, for example, the cheapest skin they found was, for example, in Apex Legends at $3.
Yep.
And at the most expensive skin was in Valorant at $50. Like that one skin. So like, okay, let's use these as our baseline. So that's my understanding based on what you've been explaining.
That's how, to be honest, that's how I would have done it as well. It's always good to use market relevant, sort of market
comparables,
relevant,
if you will,
comparable options. Yeah. I look at this though, and I'm like, I just think it's so funny that they asked a purchase question and they did not use literally the purchase intent scale. It has been standard for like 40 years.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get this wrong?
And remember, what is the 5 point again? Because
definitely would buy, probably would buy, may or may not buy, definitely, probably would not, definitely would not.
Yeah. Okay. I don't sort of.
Which again, and a lot of people are like, "Well, what's the difference?" But yeah, it's especially that middle. You're right. Neither likely.
I don't even like that question.
Dumbest.
Personally. My preference was actually, to what extent would you be likely or unlikely to, like, if it's for product trial? Because that's different, because there's no trial here. If it's ever a CPG or FMCG product, I would have typically said, to what extent would you be likely or unlikely to try this product at a price of blank? Because, like, people react to the word purchase in a funny way.
Versus try.
I'll give it a shot.
Oh, exactly.
And actually, give it a shot is more useful, because in the concept of new customer acquisition, giving something a trial and a shot kind of removes some of that emotional sort of entanglement. It's one of the there was a huge debate among the methodologists here in Canada all about, do we want to ask about trial or do we want to ask about purchase? And everyone, the dogma was like purchase. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Then why do we always talk about getting product trials in our internal discussions? If that's the case, shouldn't we should internally start to adjust our language? Yeah. It's a big difference.
I'll try anything.
Just like Echo, she'll try anything. I'll try it. I'll try anything.
Yeah, I
I'll
think
try
one thing we can all agree on is
Creepy robot. Why did Winston make that creepy sex bot? It was
I
weird.
don't know.
Yeah.
Winston's weird.
Maybe Dr.
Yeah.
Liao was just a freak. Anyway.
yeah. At the end of the day, I think one thing we'd all agree on here is as long as they don't charge you like $100 for one skin, like I would say top end. I'd say top end for me personally, at a push would be about, I'd say about $10 US. That's the top end for me.
But you think about this. That means
If at all.
after 6 skins, you've hit the traditional retail price of Overwatch. I mean, people, it's that long, like what Johnny Rotten said, when he finished his concert, the last concert for the Pistols in the States. It's like, you ever get the feeling that you've been cheated? This is a really messed up thing. Like, I don't even buy cosmetics. I never have. The only ones I ever bought were the League skins, and those are a set price, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully they don't use this to increase the price there, but I have enough tokens saved up that I'll never buy them ever again. So I actually personally don't care.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
It's irrelevant to me. What I think is funny though is that it's taking advantage of a market where people are looking for ways to express themselves in digital forms, right? We've had that all stripped away from us. I can't walk by you, Plex, and see what shirt you're wearing or what kind of headphones you have. I lose that ability to connect through visual stimuli, and we look for new totems to work with, right? That's why social sucks, right? Because it actually strips away identity and communicative identity. So we bring that back in games, which I think is beautiful. I mean, we're doing this with the crew at Atmos. That's why we have a streetwear brand that we're like really like our product directors from the streetwear and skate scene, because he knows all about this. And now they're saying, if you want to find a way to kind of show that you really connected to this thing, it's going to cost you $30.
Yeah.
That's lame. But the thing is, people will do it because they're coming. When you have people who are coming from a digital only isolation culture of reality of identity, this is really taking advantage of folks who don't understand or don't have the means to express themselves in other ways. And now we're saying, oh, you can do it for only the low price of $9.99 today. But if you don't buy it today, prices go up, 13th of August to $29.99. So get in today. Like, this is like some weird Billy Mays, sort of like infomercial kind of sales thing to be like, this is how you belong. And I take particular issue with Overwatch on this because they take advantage. Like they've found a way into this cultural zeitgeist.
Really, all very valid. How is, we're getting like deep here and I kind of love it. How is that different? Because you talk about it like, if we're meeting people in this digital environment through games, we're not in a physical space. You're not listening to the music that what are you reading? What are you wearing? Now, all those things you described, what are you reading? What are you wearing? What are you listening to? Are all things we've purchased in our life. I purchased t-shirts that have the Advanced GG logo. Use code DKMAT to save 10%. But so
somebody clip it.
But anyway, all those things that help us with we pay for those. So what, like, I guess, especially
I get it. I hear you.
That's free to play and all this stuff. You should, like, the idea of buying something in game is not egregious.
But the thing is, look, for a world for a community, for a business and a culture that wants to say we're about expression of self and freedom and all this stuff and all these wonderful ways of doing it. I'm like, look, so long as these skins will still show up randomly in the free boxes that I get by playing, yeah, I'm okay with it. But if they are only available because you purchase it, why do we want to recreate more the shittiness of folks in high school who are ripping on kids who can't afford a certain pair of shoes?
Sure,
man, you show up with some
So
like, I'm sorry, man. Like, why do we want this?
So you're like, all right. So what you're saying is like, so like, to the point I just made is like, that's true, but in this new frontier, we can do better than making you buy
So actually, Barry DC. So he goes, so are you saying you'd rather have a game paid for so you have all the customized stuff than a free to play game with paid for cosmetics? I actually think what you can do is you should just have everything available if you play long enough, or you could buy it. It's like you can have both options, but nobody does that. And you think about the reality of so many folks today, like it's no wonder that so many people struggle so much. I'm like, many of us got to get out of elementary school. We got to get out of high school, right? We got to grow. We got to change things. The difference is those same shitty attitudes that many of us have had, right, over the years, right? You can never escape this. There are all sorts of cultural class divisions and perceptions that exist. If you don't have the right thing, the right look, say the right thing, meme the right way, why in God's name do we want to actually continue encouraging this when you're wondering, like, people will always find something to hate on. They will always find something to pick on someone, to go after them or whatever, right? And I just think it's so funny that we think that this system is immune to that. Do we think that image and look and feel here is going to be like immune to any of the other crap that we see? Obviously it's not. We know this because people get shit on, like how many people like ripped on people when they had whatever, the pink Mercy skin. And then it's like, oh, e-girl this, blah, blah, blah. We see these things happen. But my whole point is, it's like, why do we want to encourage hyper consumption culture connected to identity? Why would we ever want to encourage that?
Yeah, I mean,
when that's as a sole option. Look, if you can have one or the other, I'm cool. That's fine, right? I think it's weird if you're like at least when they said you can only get this if you were at an event, then at least you're tapping into shared experience or it was part of BlizzCon, limited time, cool. But to be like, it's only here, and you start to like create these pricing scalars where this one's worth more. You're right. This identity is more valuable.
Yeah.
I'm like we're taking the things that people love to use as a foil when we're ripping on people like Dr. Disrespect and like Midnight Society and Dead Drop, when we're like, why do you have to have anything that has rarities and utilize like Polygon for your blockchain and create this like value that this is worth more? I'm like, people, clearly we don't need that to create shitty attitudes.
And I will say this is the last thing I'm going to bring up on this. We obviously want to get to the Contender stuff.
Oh,
what they don't mention here is how you can purchase it. It's like, will you be able to earn? So let's say that $45 converts to say 1,000 Overwatch League tokens. It's like, is there a way you could grind out the tokens rather than pay out the $45?
Well, and that's what I'm hoping. And if that's the case, honestly, it's fine. I have if it's a cosmetic and it's like pay to acquire, but you could still get it randomly in a loot box. Hey, you know what? That's cool.
Well, they've already said loot boxes are gone. So, but
then.
That's already been confirmed. So, but what we don't know, I think, is what Plex is referring to. The idea of like, just by playing and doing maybe like a daily challenge or a weekly challenge, you get 100 Overwatch coins, blah blah blah. And then when you go to a skin, will there be an option of?
Are you saying I have to open all of my loot boxes and
they will automatically open for you?
Oh yes,
if you don't do it,
dude. I have like 2,000 of them.
Yeah. Okay. They will automatically switch out. They will open and whatever's in them you get.
So day of Overwatch 2 release or just before, you have to do a live stream. You open your loot boxes.
That would be kind of funny.
We're going to do it because I have 2,000 of them. But like I said,
yourself opening loot boxes.
Yeah.
I think about this. All we're like, again, societally, we're talking about the impacts of like hyper consumption culture and the realities of cost and value and how nobody stands a chance, right? We don't stand a chance in the modern economic environment because of all these bullshit costs that are put in ahead of us. And we're going to be like, yay, $50 for a skin. I'm like, at what point do we say no more? Right?
Well, they're already saying that with EA and the whole FIFA fiasco. Like,
oh my God.
Actually, read a stat.
Yes. The FIFA, Plex, tell people about that because that is really wild.
Okay, so I'm not sure if this is the one you're thinking about, Richard, but to compete in the FIFA esports scene, you need to invest about $200,000 for the best team possible.
Yep.
And
for fun. FUT.
And all that is on loot boxes, essentially.
Really?
You have to roll a loot
random
box to get the player you want, and all in is about $200,000 minimum just to be a pro player. Whereas obviously you look at something like the Overwatch League, you just have to be talented at the game.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, the FIFA stuff is insane because those players impact on gameplay. There is a pay to win aspect in it. At least here it is just cosmetics. I just think it's so
Yeah.
funny for a game that is so heavily invested in people finding ways to identify with certain looks and feels and now putting a price tag on it. Like, this is everything that was shitty about when people took your scene and then turned it into the shittiest derivative of it and tried to sell it back to you.
Okay.
Like, this is what happened in like hip hop, drum and bass,
Right.
jungle, house,
Totally
and then
understood. I will say, to play a little bit of devil's advocate, and I don't like any of this, but like,
Who
and
does?
Matt
I'm
secretly
sure.
loves it.
I think you. I think you probably have a good answer for. I think you have a good
Yeah,
answer
yeah.
for me. It's the classic thing though. But at the end of the day, like, especially if you are going to go, we are going to give this platform to you for free. They do have to, and we want to work on this for you for the next 5, 6, 10 years for free. We need to earn income some
Obviously,
way, somehow. So like, things will have to be purchased in the game. Like, we can't just go have everything. That's a really altruistic, a beautiful idea. But
no, I get it.
Will not work. So where's the balance?
I'm totally with you. So that's why I want to see what the balance point is. I'm curious what the revenue forecast is. And if they come back and they're like, we made 50 times the money here. Here's the problem with that. I actually love that idea. I think it makes sense. Obviously, we have to create a means to sustain everything. That's part of sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
And do you really think they're going to put their profits back into this game? Really?
No, well, that is, of course.
They're going to give you definitionally the lowest possible grade of service, the fewest number of patches possible.
Yes.
So I'm glad. Look, everyone's like, this is the whole thing. We're dealing with a company. Like, man, Bobby Kotick's happy as a cat because nothing's actually happening. People forget that when Overwatch 2's big beta release came out was the same day that they also said nothing bad ever happened at Blizzard. So you still have a fan base that's like, I hope you are a better Blizzard. I'm like, guys, you lost that fight already. And everyone's moved on because all they want to do is play and be happy with themselves. The intrinsic selfishness and self-centered and like lack of perspective that people have on it is where I always get really frustrated because I'm like, it's okay to like things. Honestly, the reality is in practice, everyone will say it's fine to love things that destroy the planet, hurt people, savage the poor, and don't feed people. You see that every single day. All the time in people's actions. So at what point are you just like, what really drives me crazy is that when we see groups like coming out of like the Overwatch, like from corporate levels at Overwatch being like, we really support all these groups and we want to make the better place. I'm like, how are you doing any of this? Because quite frankly, I see a lot of propagation of really, it's not even bad. It's the average type of corporate execution. I don't expect any more or less. So why do we pretend that it is? You know what I mean? Why do we pretend? That's the crime for me. Stop blagging about something you don't actually care about. Right? Yeah. If they cared about charities, they would have made it a lot easier for all of us locally to raise money for charities, but we're not approved. I'm like, what? You think we don't know enough about Toronto to tell you that St. Michael's Hospital is kind of an important place to help? So they want to promote us, right? But then the moment they get pressure as to like, but then they want like the safe bets. Everybody wants safe and everybody wants consistent. That's why the charities are always these broad, safe things that are corporate approved. Guaranteed they're going to have things where they're like, well, I know a person there and they're happy in this. I would love to see their donation. I would love to see their operations to donation ratio. I want to know how many pennies on the dollar, go in or go into administrative fees, right? Matt was there. Warfare Matt was there. We could not get support to get charging stations at the trauma unit for Canada's largest trauma hospital. It deals with gunshots, car crashes, whatever happens, strokes, heart attacks, massive burns. Okay. You go there because if you do not, you get sent there when the other hospitals can't help you. It is beyond their capacity. You go there when, if you do not get there, there is no chance you will survive. And that is not good enough for these guys to talk about. So that's why when I think about like how they want to talk about identity and supporting groups, and then I see like, that the means to do that is to get in here. And then it's just like, oh yeah, but it's going to cost you $50. I'm like, look, if you're going to do this, at least make it worth it. But I don't think they will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Well-
they've clearly failed when they cost them nothing to do it. Do you think they're going to do it when it now costs them money?
Yeah. Well, speaking of caring, I believe we have another thing that Richard's probably going to rant on, and of course
I can
that
go.
is.
This one's actually really easy.
I'd say, we're going to be talking about Matt. If you hit the banner for us, please, I'll do the segue.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll take over your job. Just
I was in
I know I'm
Plex
gonna
is
be
just.
absolutely useless
Do
on this.
you want to just log in? Yeah. You want?
I was like, I'm only doing this because I know I'm going to be absolutely useless on this next subject, and that is, of course, the Contenders catastrophe. So, for those
So-
who may not be aware, there was an administrative muck-up in the finals of, I believe it was the EU bracket, was it, Matt?
Yes,
believe
it was.
yes.
It was
the
the
summer
winner. It was the
series.
upper bracket. It was the upper bracket finals.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
where-
actually, what's more important is, so what's fascinating is what ended up happening was the teams are playing. I think Munich Esports was up like 3-0, and then the 0-1 or whatever they're called. Their opponent starts to come back. They come back 3-2 because it's a best of 7, and then all of a sudden the admin's like, oh, actually it was a best of 5. The game's over. It's actually back to where it was as a 3-0, and I'm like, okay, that's weird. Now here's the problem. In this statement, they're like, oh, the official match rules said that it was a best of 5 and there was an error and then we're going to restart it, blah, blah, blah. But if you actually exit out of this and you go back to the tweet where they're writing this.
This is not from the tweet. This is from our Discord. So I
Oh,
don't
okay.
I can find the tweet. So let me.
Okay, so just go to the OverWatch Contenders Twitter.
I'll
This
find
is where it's important. So the problem is the documentation for the games leading into this whole leading into the finals actually said best of 7. So this whole statement that, oh, it was always in the rules, I'm like, actually it wasn't. Your documentation said it was best of 7, not best of 5. But what I think is funny is that when you actually look at this, and I'm like, oh, I totally know what happened here. Some bozo just like fat finger at a 5 instead of a 7, because if you actually look at the rules, it doesn't make any sense at all. And nobody caught this. Now, why it's funny is that the teams that asked to confirm, because they were probably confused as well too, and they did a day before, the admins at for Path to Pro said no, it is best of 7, and now it's just like, then they had to replay it, and Munich ended up winning. But it's one of those cases where it's like, what are you people doing? And all I'm gonna say is, this is the reality. Like, how many teams are not?
I can't find. Do they take down their Twitter profile?
No. Here, I'll send it to you right now.
Is it Overwatch _contenders?
No. It's Path to Pro.
Oh, Path to Pro. That's right. Okay,
it should be
Got it.
noted just real quick that when this occurred and the admins were like, pause the game, both teams refused to play.
Yes, exactly. Because
like,
it makes no sense anymore.
They literally
here,
stop the game.
So I have the tweet.
Okay, so check this out. So go to the tweet. Now just scroll down a little bit. Past 50 Cent with the middle finger. Past that guy. Past these people laughing at them.
Memes.
The
Rock.
There's eventually going to be a picture
Of the rule book.
There you go. Schedule. Okay, look at this. Lower round, best of 5. But then all of a sudden, you see those uppers get to go to best of 7.
Best of 7.
Yeah, somebody just
and lower round 4 best of 7.
It doesn't make any sense, because why would your lower round 3 and your upper round 3 have?
Different.
Why would this change?
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
100%.
So all it was is somebody was like making a typo, and like there's a really easy fix for this. One, BO5 and BO7 should never actually be written with a round name. That should be a separate column, so like game state or win condition. Like, that's a bad way to make a spreadsheet, but nobody knows how to make spreadsheets anymore. I won't go into that in detail though, but nobody knows how to do this anymore.
Sure.
So why it's funny is that they have to like replay the game and like continue from where it was, and it's like a joke. But here's the thing: how are your admins this bad?
That
they couldn't handle the questions and the answers.
Yep.
They just like stopped the game. I'm like, if you told them it's a best of 7, you just have to go with it at that point. You don't just stop the game and go backwards. You're committed, because both teams agreed to those conditions, and then you just have to make a comment about that later. But if they both agreed, you could tell them at the end of that map, you could tell them there's been an error. How would you like to continue? You could do all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But the reality is this: Contenders has sucked for a long time. the support for it has sucked. You can't
absolutely
generate money or even survivability as a team. We know that everything's sloppy, and everyone still goes back. You still go back, right?
Because it's the only option.
But the thing is, no, it's not the only option. The other option
to get pro Overwatch.
Then the other option is don't go pro, don't play.
Yeah, try telling that to a kid with a dream who, you know what I mean?
Well, fine, but then the case is they owe nothing to you.
You're not
They're
wrong.
a shitty corporate entity. There is no public or recreational way to go up. It's not like when you make. There's a reason you go through indies. There's a reason you go through juniors in sports, right? There's a reason you go to college. We have games you can play, but here we got, it's got to be a play versus tournament, or you can't do this. You're not allowed to say Overwatch. Here's like the disproportionately overly heavy rule set for the community license and tournament. And no scouts will look at you there. And the thing is, you can be a pro in Overwatch by not playing contenders. If we had some reasonable form of open tournament series. Right? So my point is, but they're not giving it to you. So, and then you look at how players are treated anyway. Why does anybody care? Like, quite frankly, I'm like, they have shown us what the system is and how they do this. It's your choice to go for it. Because at this point, they're not getting any better. They haven't gotten any better for 5 years. So why are we expecting them to do more? They actually don't have to, because everyone is still going. They're still watching. They're still doing this, and they're treating you like crap. And you still come back. You know what? You're the sucker.
True. Like that. That's a hard. I have a hard time with that. And you're not wrong. You're not wrong. This idea of like at a certain point, you kind of got to see the writing on the wall. But it's like we can't. I also don't believe in. Just they're not going to get better. We can't hold them accountable. Just fuck them and do something else. I don't believe that's the right answer either. It's kind of it's not head in the sand, but it's akin to that. In this idea of just like, well, they're just not going to get. I throw my hands up. I'm going to try to do something else. Well, no, I want to fucking do this, and I want to make this system better.
I know,
How
but
do we do that?
This is not a public utility. It's not even a public domain.
I know
game.
that, but like that's not the point.
But it is. Because that's the problem with esports. That's the problem with this entire culture. We are all playing in to a corporate television show
100%.
to be on the next episode, right?
100%.
And the issue is that if someone is treating you like crap like this, where there isn't a switching cost other than your personal pastimes and interests, right? You can find another game. Right, like they actually definitionally don't owe anybody anything. They have no mandate to serve community or public interests.
No,
they have no reason to support social like constructs and reality and solving
it finally affected their bottom line, which clearly
it's not.
Right.
We literally celebrated the release of the beta the same day they weaseled their way out of ever having to address any workplace harassment issues. They can get away with murder. That's the reality here, right? And it's like, that's why I tell folks, I'm like, it's fine. A lot of people are like that. A lot of companies are like this, right? But then you just have to accept it. And that's the hard thing, because we want to see things in these harsh dichotomies of acceptable or unacceptable, good and bad. And lots of options aren't good. Lots of them aren't, right? We make these decisions. What I just think is rich is when we lay on all these concepts of like needs and goals and benefits and what we can do, when clearly this is where it ends. And I feel bad for every Contenders player that's ever gone through this, right? There's a reason why none of the teams, we're like, what are we going to do now? None of us, like, it's not that we couldn't actually do better. We weren't permitted to. They milked the efforts of hundreds, thousands of people who are trying to run organizations and teams. Right? And then at the same time, it's like what I mentioned before. They'll like create these ideas where it's like, oh, our first global tournament ever. So not only did they like keep a system going in an approach that really took a lot, and a lot of people were hurt. Some guys, I could tell you some of the folks who were on Revival, like it didn't go well. especially those who were like sitting at the top, who put in a lot of effort. A lot of other teams did this too, right? And then what happens, right? Now, oh, did you know that now we're global? I'm like, we were global back then. What, you think having the contenders teams play each other from international regions wasn't global? Like, what the hell are you guys talking about? We had teams with players from different countries, but no, you don't even get counted anymore, right? So one of the another problem with esports, everything's bloody ephemeral. You're forgotten the moment you're not kowtowing to everything that you see. And it sucks. It sucks because I've seen incredible people do incredible things and build so much, and nothing ever comes of it, but they did it because they loved it and they supported it. Now, fool us once, shame on us, right? Fool us 50 times over the course of 5 years. At what point are we like, just accept it? I'm not saying that you even quit. I'm just saying just accept that it's a shitty system, right? It is. It's bad.
Of course it is. I don't.
Okay, well, how are we going to make it better? How are we going to affect change?
Well,
how are we going to affect change?
You are right in the sense that the only way to do it, it sucks. It's like, yeah, the only way to do it is to not do it, because
or put your money where your mouth is. Actually do something.
You walk. Well, in this case, it's walk away.
Yeah.
No, nobody wants to feel the contenders team anymore. Sorry, the system sucks. We don't want to do it anymore.
We all left. And you know what happens?
Who's all? Everybody.
Back when you think of like Triumph, Revival, Phase 1.
Unfortunately, and I think this is kind of your point you're making. To the shitty point is, you literally have to get every contenders team from every region around the world.
And this is the great irony. Someone else is always going to want to try to make that shot.
Right. We'll do it. Scabs, baby. Scabs.
Exactly. You're like Scabby the rat, that big inflatable rat that's in front of all those places, that are hiring non-union workers downtown in New York.
They don't want in. Fine. Okay. Me and our friends.
We do it.
Our
we do
org
it,
will
right?
come do it. Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a culture that says we need to have like better balance and treatment in offices and working culture, but we'll go stab someone else in the back and go in and do whatever we want just to go have our moment. I'm like,
the New York is
at what point do you have some kind of solidarity where you're gonna like kind of work with people and be like, hey, maybe, just maybe, we can actually stick together on something, but we got to do it together. I always think this happened, it's like every time you hear about these stories about, did you know that Solaris never paid anybody, or this team has never paid anybody, and they're like, you hear about these orgs that are like in debt, which I don't know how you roll up a $30,000 in like debt in Overwatch. Like if you did that, you're an idiot. Like you were clearly promising numbers that could have never existed.
Yeah.
And I don't blame people for taking the role. But what I do have a big issue with is you see these tweets come out where everyone's like, yeah, I had the same experience. And I'm like, well, then why didn't you tell anybody? Why didn't you do anything about it? And all of a sudden, you get all these people saying, I was treated the same way. I was treated the same way by this guy who never paid anything. Okay, well then if you heard those things, you heard those rumors, or you've been talking about it, then why was anybody going? Why didn't you help someone and prevent them from getting into a situation where you knew they were going to be taken advantage of? Why? Because everybody's willing to step over someone else to make it to get their little play.
And I will take a little bit of a thing with that. I think a lot of the case, 100%. I think that does happen a lot. Let's not take away from some people who do feel saying something or warning someone, whether publicly or not, is not always tangible. It's not always doable. And it is you're worried for your job. You're worried about paying your rent.
Look, hey man, we get this already. Like, I mean, we already know what kinds of like news issues and things aren't covered or actually strictly prohibited through internal memos by the league. But my point is, this is at like the contenders level. Please. Like, you're not talking about, you think anybody there actually matters to your future growth? And that's the whole problem. This goes back to that first thing. Nobody knows.
What are you I'm talking about the people who have gone through these experiences and they come out after the fact. It's like, well, why didn't you say anything before? Is what you're saying, and it's because fear. And I know,
but what I'm saying is, you don't get blacklisted from talking about some Overwatch contenders team lying about what they pay people. It's a contenders team.
But you can't, because that's how you see it. You can't put your view on somebody else's view.
But that's why I was saying
it might be the world to them.
You have a huge responsibility. Everybody does. If you're going to enter this space to shepherd things with some level of integrity, some basic levels of ethics and integrity.
That is a beautiful thought. In reality, it is not that simple.
I know.
If everyone were idealistic and altruistic and like could stand up for somebody below them and everything and have the strength to do that, that would be a better place. But a lot of people don't and are afraid to speak out and are because they're victims of things, and you can't blame them for not righting the wrong.
I'm with you. I get it.
It's not that.
What I think is nuts, though, is that this is the system. And so, Boss Pedal, these are often also young kids, right? And and we're not talking about fully grown adults. I agree. I actually agree with you. I think it's weird that we don't enforce more standards. Like, here's the weird thing. We had to submit, like, I still remember when we had the league team, it was weird. I learned this, like, when I had to field the league team, I had to submit all the contract standards to the central office. It was weird. It was like being a hockey team or something.
Mm-hmm.
You had to explain what they were signed for, how long, what the comp was. A little bit of transparency would help a lot, but I do think this is one of those problems with completely deregulated, right? Systems for like amateur development, but then at the same time enforcing these like strict regulations in weird ways that have to do with the way you can get sustainable. Like, Of course you're going to get people that lie. You're creating an environment for it. I'm telling you, you can't make any money this way, but I'm not going to check any single thing that you do ever.
Right.
Okay. What's going to happen?
Oh,
of course
100%.
Of course people are going to be doing things like, in the back room. That's how it works. That's life. But why do we think this is any different? Like, why do we just not see the system for what it is? Because if you see the system for what it is, then we could actually, like, at least, like Malik once said, I had a great talk with Malik, and we used to joke that, like, the scene man needs older homies, man. You need, like, older homies, man, to, like, help out people. You got to talk to people, explain these things to people, right? It's one of those cases but do you think anyone's ever going to bring up stuff that I've ever said? I can tell you exactly why none of these systems will work. They won't do it. Because I don't YouTube, man. I ain't a TikToker. I'm not going to go out and try to lip sync something. And I dislike Drake a lot. Like, I ain't going to fit in, right? What do I know? I'm a boomer. Well, then that's on you. That's on you. Because there are people out there who have tried to work this out, but it's not cool. It ain't popular to point out reality ever. But then everyone wants to go through and keep sustaining the system. And all I'm saying is, I'm not saying I think it's abhorrent that people take advantage of youth the way they do, because they have a very limited means to see the broader world. All they see is life on the screen, right? Mm-hmm. But then the flip side is, like, they think, oh, I made it, but your sign of making it is just not being invisible anymore, because that's how you live your whole life these days. But then that's the thing. I'm like, all you have to do is really hammer through the years. You know what I'd love to see? I'd love to see OverWatch Contender teams have to submit our rosters and contract requirements and statements to the league, because we had to do that to Riot. I'm not saying Riot's perfect, but that was a big difference.
Yeah.
Because I was like, shit. And we had a submission date. Like, it was crazy. I was like, oh my God. So, like, we were like racing to get paperwork. I had to, like, write contracts and double check everything, make sure it all made sense. Right? There's a reason why when we had players on Revival, my job wasn't to talk to players. I talked to their parents, because I'm closer in age to their parents than I am to them.
Sure.
But that's important. You have to do those things when you're working with youth. You have an obligation to do that, right? And I know that people are like, I know, oh, that's halcyon thinking. I'm like, yeah, it is. But it's also what you would do if you were in any other sport.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the thing. You don't get to do that in house league hockey. Go in, just deal with kids, never have to deal with parents, never have to show things off, right? Mm-hmm. It's a requirement.
Yeah.
Right?
No, that's very,
it is
very
true.
true.
So where is that here?
Yeah.
And you know who can, and the person that can do that is the league. But you know what helps them get players in? Just having you funnel the money.
Yeah, not doing
it. It is in their best interest to keep you ignorant, right? To make you desperate, to put you in a spot where you think the only way out is to go that path. And that's dirty, man. That's really dirty.
Hard agree on that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's like it's bad indie promoters. Like, music scene was like this. I can imagine wrestling was like this. You know what?
Holy
Do you have a wrestling story you can tell?
No, thank God. Nothing. I mean, awesome. little things here or there, but
this
nothing
must happen. This must happen with the promoters.
But that's actually for all the back and forth, that's actually a really good way to put it. It's like a crummy indie promoter, but it's the only way to get to the
you got to
NBA
go
or
through
whatever.
them, right?
Like it's not like, oh god, yeah, these guys contenders are shit, avoid them, let's go work here to get to. You have to. That is the only, that is really crummy. Absolutely, I agree with that.
I'm going to actually chime in here, and I've actually been listening to you. So what you're saying is, it's almost like you monopolize the path to pro, so to speak. It's like the only way to get to the Overwatch League is through this system. No other way. It
Or
basically
being
got
a
monopoly on it.
crazy ladder monster like Jonak, who wasn't, but it doesn't happen. Not everybody's Ian Wright, getting found on a community pitch and then making it to Gunners. But for, like I said, what I think is, and that's the whole issue, right? This is not an impossible problem to solve, but it is an easy one to ignore when everybody's still paying all their dues, paying all their money, and giving you a bank account, and you're comfortable. Like, it's not hard to do the wrong thing. It's actually really easy.
Oh yeah.
And this is why I think, like, having tournament frameworks, allowing this to be open, like, a couple of things that'd be great is, one, I think it'd be great to just like put this through. One. Plus, it's like, honestly, open contract review would be a great thing. I've seen so many bad contracts from supposed talent agents. I'm like, you guys are like bad contract lawyers. You're not a talent agent. I mean, I had the head of one agency once tell one of the parents of my players, who was like, because she was asking about sponsorships, and that head of the agency goes, oh, well, if you hear about anything, send them our way. If we hear about a company that wants to sponsor this player, we should send them your way. Dude, that is your job. Your job is to go and find these partnerships for people. So you want us to find people to send them your way, so you take your commission based off of something you didn't even hunt down, and that doesn't go to the player. Tell me how that even makes sense. And this was the head of one of those big talent agencies where everyone had the fucking email address, in their handle.
Yeah.
That's what this industry is. It's full of people who are pretending that, like, they're playing these roles that they saw in a movie, and they're all fronting. They're all cardboard gangsters, man. They're all cardboard gangsters.
Basically, a group of Lionel Hutzes. Is what you're saying.
But Lionel Hutz was lovable, especially with his feelings to bourbon. Sweet bourbon.
Sweet.
What's that?
Yeah.
Do you want me to drink?
Charmingly befuddled fool, as opposed to just like piece of shit.
Yeah, and that's the thing,
exploitative piece of shit.
There are a lot of exploitative pieces of crap, man.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the folks who actually, like, the thing is, you know what? A good story is not like doing good things because it doesn't make news. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
You just do it because you do it. You do it because it is right.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I've always said, I was always proud of Revival because we were really poor. We were very poor. But we were honest.
Yeah. You had the
You can
core
live with that.
values.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I kept the documentation with some agents trying to heavy hand, my colleagues. They didn't know me, but I saw the stuff they wrote and the implication that you try to blacklist an owner or a coach. But I got no skin in the game.
Yeah.
So I went back and I was like, you know what? No, you don't do this to good people that I know or in general. So I went back and, like, I'm very proud to say, and I can one day, if you ever want, I can show you this because this is not NDA. I'll show you this one day in our chat, like, from private. But I have this glorious note, and I saved this because in the end, we knew we were out of our legal fees and it was going to be easier to part ways, blah, blah, blah. But I have in my emails this note where this, like, jackass agent had to basically write, and basically I said, I know either way we're leaving, but I want this in writing that this person's initial assertion that started this all off was completely incorrect. I want a lawyer to say they were wrong and misinterpreted the situation, and I want that on paper, and I got it. And I'm like, fine, it's where it is, but you know what we know? We knew we were right. This was just someone being a piece of crap for nothing. For nothing. Like, why are you fighting over this in Contenders? You think this is going to, like, help you out some way?
Yeah.
Like, no, this ain't gonna help anybody out anyway. And that was a great irony. Because you know what happened as a result of this? Nothing. Like, nothing really happened. Nothing really changed. It was just somebody trying to be like, I'm a talent agent and a lawyer. And I'm like, well, buddy, if I caught you out and like I barely got, I flunked out of first year business, let me tell you something. If that's the case, you're not a very good lawyer.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm just a dude who, I was on satellite internet and I beat you by reading documents. It takes me like a day to get a document. You get in like 5 seconds and I'm already proving you wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if I wasn't there, I don't know if the folks I was with I don't know what their response would be. And I don't know if they would have been bullied and harassed or just put, like you said, made fearful of the potential implications.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason I had that put in writing is that person ever opens their mouth that so-and-so, tried to do something a certain way and we get wind of it.
Yep.
We get to kick that guy's ass in the best way possible. With another lawyer's letter.
with written proof, written documentation.
Now we need a meme of Richard as Pat McAfee kicking Corbin in the nuts. We need that now.
But all the frustration aside, though, like I think Contenders, it could be so much more. It should be so much more.
Could and should.
It requires focus. It requires people who are good at what they like. People who have not just the interest, but also have a capability to make it something more. And I was talking to a former Revival member just the other day. We keep up, some of us. It's kind of weird. It's like this, like
player backstage just for a laugh.
Yeah, it's just one of those times we're just chatting, and I said, I actually told him this. I said, I actually get kind of sad when I think about it because I see where a lot of people ended up and what we do now. And we were only one team, one org. Now, assuming all the other orgs, quite frankly, I thought some of them had better folks than like me and a lot of other folks, right? I mean, I like to think we were good, but I knew that there were folks who were awesome.
Yeah.
There were like a half dozen of them. And this was in the minor leagues. The minors.
Yeah.
It is a shame that opportunity was squandered. We could have had it all. And it became this whole desire to own the verticals, monetize everything.
Mm-hmm.
We have to make money. And I'm like, yes, you do. But you're making it in the wrong parts of the business line. And it's sad. And we kind of waxed about that. And we, did our talk and, was then, hope to cross paths again in the future. But you think about that. I think of like the Phase 1 and Triumph. And, I think about those teams where it was like those rivalries were there. Like, I'm pretty sure Rival, why do we always have to play Triumph? I don't know why that happened. Why do we have to always play them? You know what I mean? And the thing is, it's that what do all stories need? Like, you need chapters and you need continuance and you have series and the stories change and they evolve. But the beauty of, old films and books is you always go back to them and those heroes and those stories will always be there for you.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And you build a legacy and a culture. It's why we can talk about old matches, man. Like I can talk about the first Brooklyn NXT all the time. And then the second one when I went to and I barely made it in time,
Yeah.
I was there. My first month in New York was WrestleMania at MetLife Center. And it just came up the other day when the missus, she's like, man, because I was playing Living Color. And she goes, wasn't it crazy that we saw CM Punk and The Undertaker at MetLife? And she goes, do you remember that we could feel the flames? And we were in the upper deck, but we felt the flames when Undertaker made his entrance. And I was like, yeah. She goes, man, my Gramps would have loved that.
Yeah. I mean, I
those things. Yeah. And I said, that's important because these cultural memories and narratives are important because we attach ourselves to them and then they impact things.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway.
I was going to say, because I was actually, so Rich, you might remember this, the Zephyr stall strap against Houston Outlaws.
Yes.
I was actually in the Discord watch party with Mayhem Cord when that was going on. everyone was
Yeah.
just losing their nuts
Yeah.
over that moment. And it was going loud, and I was thinking to myself, oh God, I'm going to try and keep the noise down because it's stupid o'clock.
Yep. Yeah.
And you could feel the tension. Like, Zephyr was pelting, and that's a story.
It is.
It's a
New
moment.
York Excelsior beating Seoul Dynasty for the first time in the first season. I remember I was there that day. That was when this big, massive clip hit. And I still remember the line. It's like, there's nothing. It's like you can't stop them especially when you're dead. That was like the line, right? As Jonak was finishing people off on the point. And it was like that final story where the team that was formerly LW Blue finally beat their rivals. And we saw it together. We saw it together. And it wasn't the game memory that we remember. It was that room exploding. And everyone saw that clip and wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Because
and what happens after that? It's the Nene Graviton surge the following year.
Quiet, you. No, but it's one of those things where you think about it, right? And it's like, you can't have this if you're continuously churning out people and groups. Because when you do that, you're churning out your own history. And that's the mistake that's happening right now as we go further. I finally like to think I finally truly understand what all those like OG. I was never an old school esports guy. Like I played a lot, but I was never part of that scene. You know, I was between generations, right? But I get what they mean when I'm like, they're building this all wrong because the foundation of why we go back is no longer there. It's almost like it's all sizzle, no steak. You know what I mean? It's all just about the promotion.
Yep.
And they've forgotten that. Like, why is it that we can still see the Daigo parry, you know, and from Evo, like when he was up against Justin Wong, when, you know, Justin was doing Turtle Chun-Li and Daigo was down to 1 hit point.
Oh,
he fucking pulled up.
Are you talking about moment 31?
Yeah. See, exactly.
I know what you mean.
Like
Matt
you
doesn't,
see,
obviously.
Matt, no. See, but see, now you want to know, right? So we'll send it to you later.
Sure.
But you see right there, like that's something that's what we need. And you're gonna show names and players and cultures like teams and orgs when people like, I don't even remember this. Who's that guy? Like, it's weird. Right? Yeah. Like, I still remember like the Sabiel B Gibraltar touch to hold on to that map against Boston was so crazy because he like flashed in, flashed out, like because he timed it like that perfect sprint where you just have to get there at exactly the right time. It was like that scene from Justice League when Flash has to touch the box at the right time to make things happen and bring back Superman or whatever, but it was like for real life, you know? And that's the thing. You get those by maintaining history and legacy. And esports, I shouldn't generalize esports. That's incorrect. Overwatch isn't doing that very well.
Yeah.
Right? Because you know who carries the stories? It ain't the people presenting the story. I always tell people it's cliche to say we are all storytellers. The question you have to ask yourself is, what stories do we want told about us? Those people. That means the people who are carrying that message are other people.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
To you from failing hands, we pass the torch, be yours to hold it high. It's never been it's not about the people. It's about the people who keep telling those stories. It's how you become a legend. It's how we embellish and we make up stuff and things come back as funny jokes. The culture now is designed to consume. We don't get those great sort of retelling moments. And I find that really sad when you think that this is a means of true enjoyment for so many people, especially the youth. And we're now taking away their means to have these kind of permanence in what they do. Now what we're making even their existence even shorter and shorter and shorter. It's like in Japan, a high school baseball career is very short. It's 3 years. You could get on the team. You have 1 year in seniors, then you have 1 year to win the championship. That's why when you watch the Koshien tournament, Japanese high school, if you ever want to see the craziest thing, watch the Koshien, the Japanese National High School Baseball Championships. It is so intense. And the reason these players, like when they lose, they fall to pieces at times, you know? It's crazy. But you're like a shooting star. You have a very limited time to shine your light. And when you land it, if you win it, it is the greatest thing. And if you lose it, it feels like an immense tragedy. But people remember those stories. They remember these teams. This small high school how did they make it? Not unlike the World Cup. We'll have these occasional random underdogs. It's like there was a moment where everyone was wondering what the heck, Cameroon was doing. Do you know what I mean? There's always a team that kind of comes out and captures people's hearts, and we don't get that.
Yeah. Almost like a Rey Mysterio when he won the Royal Rumble in 06.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Ray winning the Rumble, right? And the thing is, you want to see those things. And it's like, I'm not saying you have to have these permanent things and copy the structure, but you have to work to figure out what that new mode of cultural storytelling will be.
Yeah.
And it can't be. And then then on the flip side, it's like, well, then how do you hold on or find these new things to like connect to? And that's why I think it's so crappy that we're making it all attached to like dollar signs and now we're just shutting more people out who have less. And like, the best underdog stories are people who don't come from very much.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's what it is when the world's against you. But I don't want to end things on like such a serious note.
But that's a beautiful note though. That's a great point, and that's very, very true. That's why I didn't really say anything, is because that's all I think can resonate with all of us, and that's something. And I don't know, and that's we're talking about Overwatch League, but I think that resonates in a lot. I know it's not everyone, but like I think it does resonate in a lot of esports. It's one of those things like we can get there. It can. It's not there yet, and there's some big changes that need to be made to help us reach those cultural touchstones and to preserve them and to give an environment that will help them forge themselves going forward. But I think it's a beautiful idea. Actually,
it's funny. Someone actually, someone randomly asked me like just on Discord, they're like, why do you, if you have all these issues with like Overwatch culture, the league's culture, they're set up, they're like, why do you do a podcast on it? And I told them, I was like, I do it because I care about the scene and the system, and that's what you do. You talk about it.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you? Right? You can be upset about structure of the Premiership.
Yeah.
You can be upset with the ownership of your team. Right?
Of course. At the end of the day, if you don't talk about it, nothing changes.
Exactly. I mean, and that's one of the great things that I learned from like, UK football culture. So if you don't like the ownership, you let them hear about it.
Yeah.
You really let them hear.
Yeah.
But I do have a funny story, like a really weird random thing that I thought you too, given that there's a lot of wrestling fans here, would think is funny. But the weirdest thing happened to me like 3 nights ago.
Okay.
So like Andrea goes to the gym with me, but like I always joke, like she gets like gains like much faster than I can. Like she's just Anyway, I was joking that like, it's like now when she like points at bread, she's like flexing. She's like, I want that piece, and like it's so funny. Anyway, so I'm like laying in bed and like the lights are kind of off, but there's like the slight glow of the phone, so you can kind of see what's going on. And she basically rolls over at me and she like kind of does like a crab flex. And all she says is, Hulk, Hogan, Hulk, Hogan. She was like, and she goes into the Ultimate Warrior promo before they had their WrestleMania. And legitimately, literally, I couldn't stop laughing for an hour, and I was exhausted because and then this the clincher is this. She goes, I was really trying to go for a Macho Man thing, but it just went into full Ultimate Warrior. Oh, I was like, at least you didn't talk about crashing an airplane from the sky. You know what I mean? But it was like, imagine that, like, man, imagine like Plex. Imagine like you're like kind of half asleep, and that glowing silhouette just says Hulk Hogan. Anyway, it was weird and awesome. So cultural memory, man. That's the thing.
It's a very
how do you like? I was like, how did you? what system of like steps in the mind did it take to get to that specific promo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at that moment.
At that moment, right? In a way, it's beautiful, but it's beautiful though, right? In a way, it's like because her pops was a huge wrestling fan. He passed a few years back. It was actually not long after we were actually in New York. It was actually the year before. That's why for her it was a huge thing. It was like, man, it's like because her grams loved Taker.
Yeah,
and you're gonna love this. I actually used to send him. He talked about like old school Maple Leaf Wrestling. That was the era he knew, right? So I was sending him at the time it was some of the DVDs I had of like Dragon Gate when it was like more like J-side promotions. And he loved that stuff because he loved the whole like I'm gonna wind up and play the drama. I sent him old school NJPW stuff from like the 80s and things like that. And it's just so funny because I was like, I know that this relationship with wrestling is always one of those things where it's like he loved Ryback. The last thing is when he was in the hospital, he used to always joke about he was hungry, so he'd always say, "Feed me more" to the nurses at the hospital, right? But like I said, I guess it's just one of those cases where I just wanted to say about mention how awesome it is when you get those moments because certain stories were supported enough at a time and they're not allowed to completely be erased by the next new edition, the next new thing. That continuity from, when you meet someone's grandparents the first time, you gotta it's like you're very respectful, and he's just talking about wrestling.
Yeah.
And that's how we started talking. My first conversation with a grandfather was about wrestling.
Yeah.
And then it goes into, he took ill, passes, and then you go to WrestleMania, and it's this like literally like a spiritual experience at that moment.
Sure.
And then, like 6 years later, randomly making Ultimate Warrior promos. like referencing such a specific promo. You see, it's all because when you think about it, the story got nurtured at a certain point many generations ago.
Oh yeah.
And it continues today. And I hope that this medium, this is where people are. So I really hope we can find a way to bring ourselves back into the mix, because that's the story that really matters.
Yeah. Absolutely. Here. I love that. This episode took we went all over, but I like that. It's not all just gonna be like, wow, Kai had a hell of a game. That's fun too, and we'll do plenty of that. But
the Lionesses won the Euros. We're gonna get that in,
and it's interesting.
Absolutely incredible, by the way. Congratulations, Plex. That must have been amazing to see.
I was watching it.
What was this? Sorry, I was
the Women's Euros. That England beat Germany 2-1 in the finals.
Huzzah!
Yep,
in front
and
of
it was a beautiful game full of
like 87,000
record crowd.
87,000.
Yeah,
87,000. It is.
You talk about stories. There's one right there. But yeah,
no, I thought it was wild. I love that they got to sing "It's Coming Home" finally. An English national team got to actually sing that. And I love that the game was full of anger and scandal and handballs and missed fouls and as you shared that one, and like that very, very clear, like if you could even remotely lip read that great clip of but it must have been awesome, man. I can't imagine what the energy has been since then, because it, you feel it. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah.
Well, I think that'll wrap it up for today, though. That was really good in depth and like on different issues, related to the game, related to the scene, but just like really, I hope everybody found some value out of that and everything like that, and maybe a different perspective on some of these things that maybe you didn't even think about. You're like, holy crap. I never really thought about it that deeply before, which I like to do that, make people click a little bit and think about something different. So I love doing stuff like that. We'll find some more touchstone things like that. But until next time, you know the deal, everybody. Usual stuff. Please like, subscribe, comment, do all that great stuff at the bottom of this video or of the audio podcast that you're listening to. But for the great Root Contenders Bear, the great Plexomatic Bear Cookie person, and for this piece of monkey trash, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching another episode of OverBOTCH. We will see you next week.
See you guys.